Okay, so I've got a couple of viewports set up with the existing and demolition plan and the proposed plan both at the same scale. And I've shown you a few examples before with annotated text and other annotation, but I just want to go a bit further with that and also show you how to set up some viewports at different scales. So I'm sure you'll be comfortable with that last part. Setting viewports up is pretty straightforward, but I know that annotative option can be a bit fiddly at first, so I'm just going to spend a bit of time on that. And I'll start by using probably a really useful trick. If you want to get a sheet that's identical to one you've already made, you can always copy it. By right-clicking on the Layout tab, you can go to Move or Copy, and then tick Create a Copy, and then choose where you want it to go. So it goes above whatever you choose here. So if I choose Layout 1 with 2 there in brackets, it'll go in between those two layouts. If I choose Move to End, it'll go obviously at the end. So I've got an identical copy, which is really useful if you want to get the title block in the same place on your different pages. If you're wondering if you can copy the title block, if you forget to do that, if you make a new page and you want to copy the title block across, you can also do that just using copy and paste. Just use copy with base point and type in 0, 0 as your base point, and then when you paste it, type 0, 0 in as well. So it's really important that you can get things in the same place on your different pages, but that first method I showed you is probably the easiest way. And then I want to make some well, I'll start with a section view actually, and so I'm going to just double click to make that that viewport active, and it's of course locked, so I'm going to unlock the scale there and then just pan to get my section. And actually, of course I don't have a section there, and oh sorry, I should have shown you the dash pan method. So if you type dash pan, you can pan in a straight line. So by clicking a base point, if you've got ortho on, you can pan just in that Y direction. If you hold down the wheel and pan, it's hard to keep the direction straight. So that's something that you can try as well. Okay, so there I've got some layers frozen that that don't need to be, so I'm going to unfreeze those. So you can see there, that's why I can't see the brickwork. But all of those things in the end will go into my existing layer anyway, so I'll fix that up afterwards, but I just want to get the section in that view and show you that the scale there is the same as the plan. And so then I want to have a detail that's just focusing in on part of that. So that's how you should reference your details from that are obviously your junctions, and are those the details you've been doing with John and Laurie, the junction between your floor and your wall and between your wall and your ceiling? There you go. So I'm going to go to the back to paper space, and then select that viewport and just make it a bit smaller. And then simply copy the viewport. And then double clicking, I can go back into the viewport and center the thing I want. So I'm going to go for that corner there, and then change the scale here. So what have you been doing, 1 to 10? Yep. There we are. So that's how you set the scale for those different views, really easy. And then you can lock it. And then it gets interesting. So if I want to do some text now, firstly I want to make sure I've got a text style for that. So I'm going to go to the annotation panel. Now it's best, actually, if you do this all on the Home tab. If you go to the Annotate tab, you'll see you've got lots of options for text and dimensions. But if you go on the Home tab and click on the Annotation panel, you've got buttons there to edit the styles for all of those main types of annotation: text, dimensions, leaders, and tables. So I'll start with my text style, and I've actually got a few that I've made already because I have shown you some of this before, but I'm going to make a new maybe notes detail style. So I'm just going to click on the new button. Oops, caps lock turned off. Yeah, exactly. That's right, exactly. Yeah, that's it. So I've got that annotative option ticked, and then I put in the size that I want the text to print. So, well, what's the smallest you think your text should be? What's the minimum you think people can read? Until my, yeah? 1.5, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, before my eyes started to go, I thought 1.5 was fine, but I can't read 1.5 anymore, even with my bifocals. So 1.8 is probably about the minimum, but 2 is good. So 2 is what you want to aim for, but if you have to, you can go down to about 1.8. And then the fonts. So fonts really are something that you can decide personally these days. And have you done anything about fonts in some of your other classes? Yeah, so the Roman fonts aren't bad for architectural work because they are based on those simple Roman fonts. So Roman S is single line Roman, Roman D is just a double line version of that, Roman T has serif, so that's getting towards a Times New Roman, but these are all line based fonts, so they're SHX, which is different to your true type fonts. And then Roman C is just a slightly more refined version of Roman T. But you can also use the true type fonts, so Arial and whatever else you want. It's up to you. So I might use Arial this time. And so that's the current style. I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to go and just draw some text just to show you the difference in the way Annotative works compared to the other way. So if I click on the drop down there, you've got 2 options for text, single line and multi-line. With single line text, you need to give a start point, and then it'll always prompt you for a rotation. And that can give you an idea why you might want to use single line text. It's really only necessary if your text is going to be at an angle other than 0. So if you need text aligned with a something that's at an angle or following a curve, you can actually have text that follows a spline for roads and things like that. It can be useful. And so there you can see it's asking me for that angle. I'm just going to press enter to make that 0, and then I can type my text in. And I can put that on the right layer. So I've just got some text layers there. I'll make some more afterwards, but that's fine for now. So usually though you can use multi-line text, and multi-line text can go a bit strange sometimes if you haven't made a text style in advance. But if you've made a text style and set the height properly, you should just be able to make a rectangle and then see the text come up the size it's going to print. And what I should have shown you with the single line text is if you press enter, it creates a new text object, but with multi-line text it's all one. So okay, so to finish multi-line text, you don't press enter. You can either click close text box up here or just click outside. So this is multi-line text. This is single line text above, just one line. You can use single line text to make multiple lines. So I'll go back and do single line text again. So again, notice it always asks you for the angle, so you just need to remember that. Okay, so I'm pressing enter in between each line. So to finish single line text, if you press enter twice, it'll complete it. So notice how I've made several rows of text, but if I come back and select them afterwards, they're all individual objects. But with multi-line text, it's all one paragraph. And if I double click on that to edit it, you can always edit any text just by double clicking on it. You can then change things like the width of that paragraph, and that's going to adjust the lines by bringing them down to suit that new width. So multi-line text generally is better. You also get the formatting bar at the top when you're editing multi-line text. With single line text, you don't get that formatting bar at the top on the ribbon. So that's a really useful thing, having that formatting option there, where you have all the different options similar to what you have with Word or anything InDesign. But you can still change all of the properties for either single line or multi-line text if you go into the properties palette. You can change those options there. And it can be really useful to do that for either type of text, just so that you can see the scale. And so notice how the text here, when I select it, has the text, the scale, sorry, that I've assigned to the viewport. So it's got 1 to 10 there in properties. So any idea why? It knows that it's 1 to 10? Because of the viewport. So this viewport is set to 1 to 10. So if I draw text inside that viewport, it's going to be 1 to 10. So now that's the same area. Notice how I can't see the text there. But the text is in that space, but I can't see it in this viewport. Right, so this is a 1 to 50 viewport. I'm going to go and draw some more text. I'm not going to change the text style. I'm going to just draw some more multi-line text. So notice how it's coming up in that lower viewport because I'm drawing in the same space, but it's 1 to 100 text. So it's showing you the relative size in that detail view. But watch what happens once I finish it. It disappears. So AutoCAD's clever enough to know that text drawn for one scale won't show in a viewport set for a different scale. So what happens then if we go back to model? You'll see both. So that's what you need to get used to. When you're working in this model tab, you will see all of the text set for different scales. So then you've got any idea what you might do if you want to draw text here? How do you let it know what the scale is that you want for that text? Doing it the old way, that's what you do. Yeah. But with this annotative option, you've got the scale here. So a lot of people think the scale in the model tab is setting the scale for your project or your drawing. But it's actually just setting the annotative scale. So all this controls is text and dimensions and leaders, things like that. That's what this option is for.
My dimensions look quite big.
Yeah, so if you use Annotative, it's much easier to set the size for things like dimensions. I'm going to do dimensions next.
Yeah.
Because you can just set the size you want things to print, and then the numbers mean something, and then you set the scale as you draw them, and it'll all turn out perfectly. So I'll set this to 1 to 10, and I'm just going to draw some more text. So I'm just going to do some multi-line text again. And we'll say this is 1 to 10 text. So I know if I go back to that layout that it'll show in this viewport, but not in this one. So you can still do your text back here, and maybe I might want that text to show in both viewports. So to do that, I can go to Properties, and there where it's got Annotative Scale, I can go to here, and this is where again a lot of people struggle because they wonder what does this do if they're trying to change the scale. Because I'll go here and add, and then so I'll choose 1 to 50, and then you'll have both in the list. That means it'll work for both. So I'll click OK, and then let's have a look. If I select it, it's going to show me both sizes. So back into the tab now, and I've got that text showing for both, which can be really useful for some things. So labels and things like that, you'll often want them in multiple scales. So if I wanted it just to be the one scale though, if I wanted it to go just to be 1 to 50, so I'll say now I want to be 1 to 50 text, then I can go to that annotative scale option and remove that 1 to 10 scale. And then back to here, so now it's here but not here. So those principles apply for all the things that you can set annotative to. So if I go now and do some dimensions, so if I go to annotation and I'll make a dimension style. So the dimension styles that you're given in the template, even the metric template, they're all pretty terrible. So you'll nearly always have to make your own dimension styles to begin with. So it's easy though, once you know how annotative works. You don't even need to start with an annotative style. You can just start with any style and then click New, and let's call it My Dim Style. And I'll tick annotative, even though I can always turn it on afterwards. Hit continue, and I'm just going to go through these panels. So this is another thing people seem to struggle with, because you've got all these different panels of settings, and people, I've seen a few offices actually where people, even after 10 years of using AutoCAD, have no idea what half of these things do, and they just try and either get it from someone else or guess and try and work out what they do. And the reason they struggle is because of the scaling. So these numbers at first won't mean a lot to you, but if you're using annotative, and you can see here on the Fit tab, that's where you can see whether it's turned on or not, then all of these numbers are simply in millimetres. So there's a little secret as well. If you don't have a tick, then some of these options won't do anything. So you can see here, extend beyond ticks is greyed out because I don't have a tick set in the symbols and arrows tab. Now, for Australian standard measurements, you should use ticks instead of arrows. So often you just need to go to that symbols and arrows tab first and choose either architectural tick or oblique. That's another type of tick, just not as thick, but I'll use architectural tick. And then going back to the first tab now, that option there is available. Okay, so then looking at these options, okay, so we've got the ticks there. That's often the first battle, just making sure that that you have that option. So then these are all pretty self-explanatory once you know what the different elements are in your dimension. So do you know what this line here is?
That's a dimension line.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. Yeah, it's a dimension. Sorry, no, it's an extension line. Sorry,
Extension line.
That's an extension line. Yeah. So yeah, that's an extension line. That's a dimension line. Yeah. So here you've got dimension lines, and if I go extend beyond ticks and just increase that incrementally, let's just type in a value, 1.5. Now I can see that dimension line extending beyond the tick. If I take it right up so you can see it clearly, let's make it 3. So I can see that sticking out a long way now. It's nice to have it sticking out, but maybe not that far. So I'm going to go back to 1.5, 2, values like that usually work pretty well. Baseline spacing isn't that useful, so don't worry too much about it. And you don't usually need to suppress your dimension lines either. So it's really just the extend beyond ticks option there. For your colours, what do you think you might use there? You could use by layer actually. By block works pretty much like by layer. So either of those options. But yeah, by layer if you prefer is just as good. But yeah, by block's fine. So then the same for line type and line weight. And then the same for extension lines. You don't usually need to do too much with those options. But then going across to these values here, extend beyond dim lines, same as extend beyond ticks. I'll make that a nice big value, 5, so you can see there that the extension lines now stick out way beyond the ticks. And so this should all be clear in the preview if you're using Annotative. If you're doing the scale differently, it's sometimes a bit trickier. So again, back to 1.5. And then you've got offset from origin, which is a really useful one. I'll nearly always have that set to at least about 2, so that it brings the extension lines away from the thing you're dimensioning. But you've got another option that does something similar, fixed length extension lines. So what that will do is fix the length of the extension line from the dimension line going this way. And that's really useful as well. But maybe to show you how useful it is, I'll turn it off for now, and I'll just show you offset from origin first, and we'll come back and turn that one on afterwards. So that's going to do, well, that's going to give you most of the settings I want for the appearance of my dimensions, but we've also got to have the text size set properly. So to do that, it's obviously on the text panel. I'm skipping symbols and arrows. All I need to do there is choose the architectural tick option. Everything else you can leave on default. So going to text, then you can see it's got this text style set to standard. So it's a bit like the text style I just made. You need to make a new text style by going and clicking Browse. So rather than using that standard style, we'll click the new option and we'll call it dim. If you like, you can tick Annotative. It actually doesn't make any difference, because the secret here is to not put a height in. If you put a height in, then it overrides whatever you do in the dimension style. So the trick with AutoCAD is leave that on 0. If you make the text style 0, so here all I've done is make a dim style called, a text style called dim, left the font on Arial and made the height 0. So I can close it now, choose dim from the list, and if that's 0, then it reads the text height from here. And notice how it's a value that you'd want as a print size. 2 means 2 mil. Because again, it gets scaled the same way the text does using Annotative. Okay, so anything else you can see that's wrong with that dimension style in the preview there? What about the decimals, the way they're showing? Would you want a comma?
You round it off.
You can, yeah, but yeah, you definitely can. But also, in some cases, you will want a decimal there, but it shouldn't be a comma, so you want that to be a decimal. So this is on your primary units tab. You can set that to a period, and yeah, you can round it off. So there's a couple of options there. You can set the precision to 0, which is helpful, but then for angular dimensions, you may want a decimal. It's usually not a bad idea. And then you can round off as well. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to even round off to the nearest 5. And that's about all you need to do. Alternate units and tolerances you probably don't need to worry about too much. So that's it. And so, yeah. Oh, that's just batch plot. Yeah. Well, a couple of ways. You can do individual files and then combine them afterwards, but if you use batch plot, it'll do it all in this one. With batch plot. Oh yeah, it's just on the main menu. So the secret is get one page set up properly, and then you can use batch plot with the same settings. I'll show that afterwards. Pretty straightforward. So,
Can you just go back to things and arrows?
oh yep, sure. So the arrow size, again, that's in millimetres. So 2.5 is usually pretty good. And the centre mark you don't use much anyway, but 2.5 is alright. And that's all you need to do. So yeah, but the main thing is getting a tick set. And then also leaving this. So actually you could change the leader there to a different arrow style. Rather than that closed one, maybe a right angle is better. Something like that. Okay, so I know now this is going to work if I draw a dimension, and so make sure you know about all the different dimensioning options you have in AutoCAD. Linear is probably the most useful. So dimensioning here, just what I've drawn. If I go from the corner there across, that's obviously going to dimension the width there, but maybe what's not clear is that linear will only dimension either horizontally or vertically. So obviously if I go vertically, it'll give me a dimension in that direction, but maybe just to make it extra clear, if I go from that corner point to a diagonal point, what measurement do you think I'm going to get now? So you can see that I've gone from this corner up to the corner here. Anyone want to be brave and guess what measurement I'll get? Okay, so it's not going to be the diagonal measurement. It'll be either the horizontal. So here, if I move around, there we are. So that's the horizontal measurement. It's 120 across, or 600 up and down. So it's one or the other, but it won't be the diagonal measurement, even though I've clicked diagonal points. Right? So it's actually a useful thing, because you don't normally want a diagonal measurement for something like this. You want a horizontal and a vertical measurement. So there I can go again and click these two diagonal points and get my horizontal measurement. But now notice how I've got these, even though I've got the offset for my origin value set to 2 mil, so the dimensions always set out that amount, and I can go back to the dimension style and adjust that. I'll show you over here. If I go to modify and then go to the lines tab, and I'll increase that to, let's make it a nice big value, 5. So it's brought them out, but they're still not looking even, because it's measuring from the object. So that's where that other option can be useful. If I go back here and use fixed length extension lines, then we can make it measure from the dimension line instead. So maybe I'll make that 10. So no matter what, my extension lines won't be any more than 10 mil measured from here, 10 mil across. So that's a really useful way of making all your dimensions nice and neat. And so I thought I'd just quickly show you some of the other dimensions. I'll give you some time to try these things, and we'll do leaders afterwards. So back to the different types of dimensions. If you want to measure, so if you want to dimension at an angle, you don't use linear, you need to use aligned. So you know in Revit you use aligned for almost everything, and you only occasionally use linear. It's the opposite in AutoCAD. You use linear for almost everything and only occasionally use aligned. So with aligned, it will measure and dimension at the angle. And I probably wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't even know what that measurement is. You don't need to know. And it's not 170, by the way. It's only showing as 170 because I've rounded off my dimensions. It will be some other measurement. What is it? 169.7056. But we don't even need to know that because you would never dimension like that. You would always dimension with linear, something like that, and give a height like that. So it's 120 by 120, 120 across, 120 up, to get that angle rather than knowing how long that line is. And that's a really important concept in dimensioning. So just quickly run through those other types of dimensions. Angular, of course, will give you the angle between two things. We know that's 45, but if I dimension between these two lines, it is, of course, 135 because it's 45 plus 90. Arc length can be a tricky one, but it's useful sometimes. But then the others, mostly there to dimension curves, particularly radius, obviously, and diameter. But definitely the main ones are linear and aligned, and probably linear in most cases is what you'd use. And so just to finish off with dimensions there for the time being, if I go back to my viewports now, notice how in the 1 to 50 viewport the dimensions don't show at all, but in the 1 to 10 viewport they all show, of course, because I've set the scale in the model tab. There we are. And maybe just very quickly, if I go back now to the model tab and set the scale to 1 to 50 and then draw a dimension, just as an example quickly, it won't show in the 1 to 10 viewport but will show up here. And then the other option is to draw inside the viewport. So that works as well. And it even works if you draw on the page. It will pick up the scale. But it's a little bit more hit and miss. It works pretty well actually, but sometimes it's hard to be sure. There's no way that you can just look and see what the scale is. Unlike when you're drawing it in model space, you can always see the scale there. But drawing it on the page, you're relying on AutoCAD to detect the object. And you can see here, if I go into properties, it does know. It obviously knows the scale, but there's no way I can easily adjust that. It still thinks it's 1 to 1. So if we go down in here, oops, don't want that. So there's no option for adjusting that that annotation scale easily. Okay, so that's why if I can, I'll try to draw the dimensions inside the viewport. That's fine, it's easier in most cases. And so that should give you enough to be able to draw your text and dimensions. Like I said, I'll do letters afterwards. Letters work really well, but they're a little bit more fiddly. But it's a great option. Have any of you not used letters in AutoCAD? Yeah, you might not have, because, I mean, with Revit, you've got the option just to add arrows to text, which is a great thing. But in AutoCAD, you don't have that, so you have to use this special leader option whenever you want to put arrows in. Or you find you'll just draw, a lot of people I see drawing lines and drawing their arrowheads manually whenever they need to do notes. But leaders are great when you get them working. It's just that they can be a bit fiddly to set up because Annotative needs a bit more setting up with leaders. So I'll do this afterwards anyway. So I'll give some time to try those things first.